let's start our Spacescape by creating distant stars and a nebula, essentially our background. So a nebula is kind of that colorful gaseous cloud that you see in photos of space. And we're going to create all of this not using any images, no stock photos, just the tools and filters within Photoshop, which I think is kind of cool. There are several tutorials on YouTube on how to do this. You can search, and I watched a couple of them before doing this. One of the things is most of the tutorials just tell you to change some numbers to this, but they don't really kind of explain what it's doing. So I'm going to try to explain a little bit so that you can create this any size that you want, whereas some of the tutorials are just make the document this size and then put these numbers in, then it works. So I'm going to try to show you how you can do it and explain it using any size that you want. Anyhow, let's get started. Let's have Photoshop open. We're going to create a new document. And our settings for this new document, I'm going with 18 inches, not pixels, 18 inches wide, 12 inches high. Why is that? Is it some special number to make this work? No. Reason is in my classroom, we have 13 by 19 inch paper. So creating stuff in Photoshop at 12 by 18 works great if we're going to print something up. Same with the resolution. We're doing a print resolution. If you're not going to print this, 72 is fine. But in case one of my students does a really good job, then I want to be able to print it out. So 360 resolution, and space is black. So our background contents, you should start with black since, hey, space is black. So let's create that new document. All right, get started. I'm going to convert the background layer to smart objects. I'm going to double click in the open space of the layer there. Oops, maybe not double click, maybe right click, convert to a smart object. Reason why I want to do that is we're going to apply a bunch of filters, and this will allow us to use smart filters so we can adjust the settings after the fact. If you don't convert to a smart object and you apply a filter, the filter's permanently applied and there's no way to tweak it afterwards if the effect isn't what you want. So really good to work with smart filters and smart objects. All right, so in this tutorial, we're going to use some filters that I kind of call them like, what the fuck filters? Like, who would use these? What's the purpose? And then after watching a couple of these tutorials on YouTube, I'm like, oh, so that's what that could be used for. Get started. We are going to make sure we're in the default foreground and background color. So hit D on the keyboard, D for default, and that's going to make our foreground black and our background white. So D for default, black and white. Then we're going to add a filter. And we're going to come up and add noise. So filter, noise, add noise. And let's see, let's try 200. For our, well, maybe for this one we'll start 100 first. Okay, 100 for our noise, Gaussian distribution, and monochromatic checked. And we're going to click OK. And it gives us this just fuzzy looking patch. Not much there yet. We're going to come up, add another filter. This time we're going to add a Gaussian blur. So filter, blur, Gaussian blur. We're going to click on that. And let's make it half a pixel. All right, half a pixel, 0.5 pixel Gaussian blur. Just a subtle little blur to our stars because they're actually, I think we're working at a higher resolution. So I'm going to go with 1 pixel. Reason why we're blurring it is stars are in the distance. They're not going to be tack sharp. They're a little fuzzy. So we're going to click OK. Now we're going to add an adjustment level or levels. Lots of times I would have my students do this as an adjustment layer, but for this particular instance, since we made this a smart object, we're going to add a levels directly to the layer, and we'll be able to control it like it's a filter. So we're going to come up to image, and image, adjustments, and levels. Shortcut key is Command L for levels. So I'm going to click on that, Adjustments and Levels. And this is where some of the tutorials I watched said, oh, just make it this number. Well, that worked for their particular size document, their particular settings. I want to kind of explain a little bit what's going on. So essentially what we want to do is we have these three sliders, and these are our black, 50% gray, and white levels, right? So we want to bring this far left slider way over to the right of our curve somewhere, and you can start to see the gray disappear and it getting really black, like galaxy and the distant stars. But now we don't have much white fuzz, right? We don't have many stars. So we got to bring some of this back. The white and grays back. And I like to have them really close to each other. And then it's kind of a season to taste at this point, right? So if I'm moving the white and grays closer, a lot of stars. If I move it to the right, less stars, okay? And then here, we can adjust that a little bit. And you don't have to have my exact numbers. I'm going to go with something like, what do I have, 131.09, 154. You don't have to do that. I just kind of like the look of that many stars. I might even maybe go a little bit less. There we go. Maybe down like that. Again, season to taste. I'm going to click OK. And that gives us kind of a starry background. Next, I'm going to duplicate this layer. Command J to jump a new layer up. And another benefit of using the smart objects is on this new layer, we want to make some brighter stars. And we could do what we just did all from scratch. But since I did Command J and I jumped up this layer, I can just come into these levels, Gaussian blur, and noise and adjust them for what we want. So I'm going to double click on add noise. Do not worry about this pop-up window. Just click OK. And I'm going to double the noise. I'm going to click 200. Every other setting the same. Click OK. I'm going to click on Gaussian blur. Double click. OK. I'm going to double that to 2 pixels. Then you'll notice there's going to be a little less stars on this layer. But we want these to actually be brighter. We want these to be bigger, brighter stars. That's what we're working towards. So I'm going to double click on levels. And I'm going to just bring that to the right. I actually want fewer stars, but bigger white ones. So I moved it to the right a little bit and that to the right. Again, kind of a season to taste. You can look at my settings and use those if you want. I'm going to click OK. Now, if I turn those 2 layers on or off, right, this is with it on, less stars, that's with it off, all the smaller stars in the background. We're getting close. With this layer selected, I'm going to come under channels, and all 4 of these channels are selected gray. We're going to come down here to selection, or load channels as a selection, and it's going to load those bigger stars. I'm going to come back to layers. I no longer need this layer, but I can turn it off in case I want to come back. All right, I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to add a new layer, and since our foreground and background color are black and white, so foreground's black, background's white, I want to make sure that my background color of white, I'm going to fill that selection in on this layer. How I'm going to do that? Command delete. All right. Actually, Command Z, I'm going to undo. I thought of one thing we can do. We can make these a little bit bigger. So we have a selection right now. And under that selection, I'm going to go select and modify and expand so that we can make our selection just a little bit bigger, so our closer stars are a little bit bigger. So select, modify, expand. I'm going to expand it by 1 pixel. So you could see they're twinkling a little bit more, a little bit bigger. Now I'm going to fill that in with white, Command D. I can deselect, right? So Command Delete to fill that in, and then Command D to deselect. You can see that we have some bigger, brighter stars, and we want those to glow a little bit. So we're going to do a layer style, double click, and outer glow. Now you can really see them popping off. My outer glow settings, normal. Yours is probably screen by default. Opacity all the way up to 100. I have a spread of 7 and a size of 10. But again, it's how big and bright do you want your stars. I like that, but you can slide these things over. So like if I slide that, right, get some kind of weird fuzzy gray look. I don't like it, so I'm going to back down, and I think I had 10, which I liked. So anyhow, that's my settings. 100, 7 and 10 normal, and the glow is white. Click OK. I can turn it on or off, and you can see I have those brighter stars. So I'm going to call this layer Distant Stars. Might help if I spelled it right. Distant Stars and Stars. Or Bright Stars. There we go. Now we have a proper name. Distant Stars and Bright Stars. In the next tutorial, we're going to add a nebula, that colorful gaseous cloud, to our background.